Let's take it in a direction that you might believe. We believe in remote viewing, right?
I believe
The government has the ability for this type of...
correct.
Right. We know that MK Ultra was tested and probably pretty accurate at some point, right? Yes.
No.
Maybe the Hatman is nothing more than a government entity that has, unbeknownst to us, in the secret, the dead of night.
At this point, they don't need the hatman anymore, so that should be retired. They just flip on our phones or...
So it must be spiritual is what you're saying. Gotcha. It was a gotcha moment the whole time. Christian, I know how much you love the Hatman, so I figured I'd drop a nice, juicy haunting by the Hatman story on your lap. What do you think of that?
I'll allow it.
Anyway, so this story is called Haunted by the Hatman, and it's by Interstellar Life. My sister saw something on several occasions throughout our lives. I never actually saw anything, only heard something extremely vividly. My mom was out with her friends watching some game, and my dad was watching a movie with my sister and I. It was a comedy, so we all went to bed laughing about it.
Little did we know.
We would not be laughing for long. I was lying in bed about half an hour after we were tucked in, reading a book. I heard somebody stomping down the hallway downstairs and then full-on sprinting up the stairs. I figured it was just my sister coming back from getting a drink or something, but I would have seen her leave her room because our doors were right beside each other and the staircase is just around the corner. So then I figured it was just my mom coming back home and for some reason being extremely loud. That is what moms do. They're known for nothing more than being extremely loud.
If it's early in the morning and you're still sleeping.
Yeah. I've noticed that when China is asleep, I'm like, like a church mouse tiptoeing downstairs with our son, be like, oh, shh, mama's sleeping. But if it's my night or my day to sleep in, who comes busting in the door at like 6 a.m.? Like, well, I got to use the bathroom. Like, hey, well, there's two in the house, There's two. Use the other one. So my son doesn't jump on me like I'm some kind of weird trampoline, all right? Daddy needs sleep too. Back to the story. The way my door is angled lets me see anybody who comes up the stairs, so I was watching and waiting as they seemed to be in quite a hurry. The footsteps were getting higher and higher up the stairs, but as soon as they got to the top, they completely stopped. There was nothing. My eyes were still totally fixed on the hallway as I got up to check who it was. I turned the corner and there was nobody. I immediately got covered head to toe with goosebumps and tried to piece together what could have happened. Not even 2 seconds later, I hear my sister screaming and she comes bolting out of her room with complete terror on her face. Without hesitating, we run into our dad's room where he is already standing up and asking what's wrong. My sister points back to her room crying and said, "There's a man." My dad rushes into the hall, turns on the light, and then turns the light on in her room. He checks the closet and behind everything, but doesn't find anything. Then he walks into my room and does the same, but still finds nothing. We spent the next 15 or so minutes holding his hand as he searched the rest of the house, flicking every single light on. He calls my mom to see if she had been home, but she says she's still with her friends. I could even hear the loud bar atmosphere through the phone speaker.
She's with her friend.
Wow.
Friend.
Infidelity on a spooky ghost podcast? I won't allow it. It's a wholesome family. How dare you? Could hear the bar atmosphere through the phone speaker. We all slept in my dad's room that night. Over the course of the next 7 or so years, my sister had run out of her room crying about the same man in her room. She says he just stands there in the corner and watches her. He just stands there in the corner, losing his religion. No. Anyway, stands there in the corner watching her. She described him as a very tall man in a top hat and a trench coat. Like a detective, she said. Everything completely black. It was a couple years after that I stumble upon what's known as the Top Hat Demon, the Phantom Hat Man, or just the Hat Man. It turns out it's an actual phenomenon. Every description and drawing is exactly like what she described seeing that day. Now you believe in the Hat Man.
No, I don't. I believe people see the Hat Man, but I don't necessarily believe in the Hat Man.
Okay. Well, let's take it in a direction that you might believe a little more likely. We believe in remote viewing, right?
I believe
the government has the ability for this type of...
correct.
Right. So if we believe that, we know that MK Ultra was tested and probably pretty accurate at some point, right? Yes.
No.
So let's say that maybe the Hat Man is nothing more than a government entity that has a list of people that they keep eyes on for one or so reasons, unbeknownst to us, in the secret, the dead of night. And we can only see them or perceive them as this shadowy hat figure, detective looking guy. But in reality,
At this point, they don't need the hatman anymore, so that should be retired. They just flip on our phones or TV or our computer.
so it must be spiritual, is what you're saying. Gotcha. It was a gotcha moment the whole time. I got him.
It's not spiritual.
Okay.
It's just an experience.
But why does everyone have the same experience? You know?
For one thing, everybody could have the same experience now because it's just part of our society. Everybody talks about it. Even if you're not talking about it, you may have heard, your friends or parents or somebody talking about it or listening to a podcast about it.
It's a pretty big jump, though. May have heard. Like in this story, this person, they had no idea what it was until she finally was doing some, looking into what her sister saw and was like, oh, this is the Top Hat Demon, or this is the Hat Man, or whatever, so they had no idea what this thing was, but it's described as the exact same thing that a ton of people are seeing. You don't think there's any credibility to that at all? There's no...
I think people are seeing these things. I'm not very convinced that it's always...
demon.
It's definitely not a demon because they don't exist. Could it possibly be something supernatural? Maybe, but
yeah.
Let's see. Do they see the same hats in India or, other parts of the world?
Do you think you go to somewhere else and they're like, I see the turban man? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, that would be fascinating to find out if the hats change in different cultures.
They go to the Bronx and I see a baseball cap. No.
Yeah.
I see the baseball cap man. Wow. So much less terrifying.
Yeah. And then when if you're in the Bronx and if they have a Mets hat or something or Yankees, it could have a totally different experience attached to it.
There you go. That's very true.
But why is it like a top hat or those kind of hats? Why?
It's usually a top hat or a fedora or something like that, like the old timey.
Were the spiritualists back in the Victorian era that strong that they opened up a portal and now we see shadow figures from their existence?
Or
appearing in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Poughkeepsie?
Poughkeepsie.
Okay. Or is it possible that they had a bunch of hats and they did kind of a side-by-side test to see which one looks spookier? Because clearly a silhouette is going to look spookier with a fedora or a top hat than it would if it was just like a ball cap,
More than likely.
Mm-hmm. So we figured it out.
No.
Once again, we're focusing on all the wrong details, bringing you all the wrong answers for all the wrong questions. You like that?
I'm curious to see what other people think is the cause of this, because we have our listeners and viewers
a lot.
Yeah, and they all have a different experience in this world, so
give us yours.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to hear what other people think. Do they think it's an actual entity or spiritual or demonic thing?
Yeah.
Is it something that your brain puts there to deal with whatever traumatic thing you may or may not be seeing or experiencing?
Is this your brain on drugs?
Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah. That is, I don't know. It's always the Hat Man is such a fascinating topic. I know that it gets played out and it's kind of, even there's plenty of people in the paranormal. We talked to several podcasters and stuff like that. One of which in particular is like, I'm tired of hearing Hat Man stories. I don't care about the Hat Man. I'm like, you got to care about the Hat Man. It's a classic. It's a classic. I never get tired of hearing about it.
Better than Dog Man.
The Hat Dog Man. The Dog Hat Man. The Mad Hat Man.
Then it is demonic because they're wearing a hat made out of a dog. That's definitely a demon.
Yeah. Demons only exist when they're wearing hats made out of dogs. Outside of that, they no longer exist in Christians' eyes. These eyes. Anyway, yeah. So send in your Hat Man stories. Have you seen the Hat Man? If you're new on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. We got all kinds of fun stuff that come out on a weekly basis. And we want your stories. We want to take them, make them our own, or at least analyze them, read them, share them, talk about them. This is our bread and butter here. And if you got Hat Man stories, we especially want to hear those. Have you ever seen this entity? creeping down the hallways of your home? Does it stand in the corner of your room, losing its religion?
Yeah.
Send it in to the gang at thefreakydeaky.com. If you're like, hey, Scott, I'm too damn lazy to send in a story, I'm just going to comment it right here. Well, guess what? That's okay too, friend. You can do that. And we can take it from there. Just say, hey, I've got an interesting story. I'd like to hear you read on the show or in a video sometime or whatever. And what I should actually mention is let's start getting voicemails in. We've done like, I think one listener voicemail story or video, but I feel like that's a fun thing where we can kind of communicate with you guys, answer questions or whatever. So if you have thoughts on any of the episodes, you want to share your 2 cents or honestly, whatever in regards to the stories we talk about, leave a voicemail at 801-997-0051. And maybe if we get enough voicemails, we start doing voicemail reaction videos. You know?
You can even send a voicemail saying nice things about me because Scott has been ripping me to shreds lately.
You can do that.
I need it.
Christian up.
Send me a voice hug.
A voice hug. Wow. Okay. There you have it. I guess we're going to end it on the voice hug bit. I feel like that's a good spot to close her out. Leave a voicemail. Like and subscribe, as Christian says all the time. We'll see you some other time because that's the way time works. We're not going to see you right now. You're leaving. We're getting out of here. See ya.